be afraid. Be very afraid. Be very, 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 very afraid. It's showtime.
Hello, and welcome to Video Scaries, a series where we look at the various bits and pieces of video that scared us senseless as kids, and we'll see if they can still scare us now, all these years later. And for this episode, we're taking a look at probably the most well-known broadcast interruption in television history. This is the Max Headroom Incident. Max Headroom himself is a character that has now become synonymous with 80s pop culture. He was known for his TV shows where he would rapidly change his voice, and the wireframe backgrounds that would become instantly recognizable to any viewer.
This is Max Head.
In the sense of modern language, he was just a media troll. His status grew further with appearances in some movies and even an alliance with Coca-Cola.
Is this a private party or can any store crash? So, new Coke is catching on. The taste is better and newer than. Oh, you said the P word. So, what I want to know is, if you're drinking Coke, who's drinking Pepsi? You said the P word. If you can't beat it, catch the wave. Coke.
However, in 1987, Max's image would be used for something that wasn't exactly for entertainment per se. On the 22nd of November of that year, Chicago station WGN-TV was showing its 9 p.m. news, covering the sports section in particular, when seemingly out of nowhere, this happened.
Well, if you're wondering what's happened, so am I. Actually, the computer that we have running our news from time to time took off and went wild. So what we're going to do is start over from the top of the Bears and tell you once again about the 30-10 victory they had over Detroit today out at Soldier Field.
This one is often forgotten about, probably because there is no audible dialogue within the interruption, just that sort of weird audio that you hear. But even though no one is talking, I still think this would have been extremely creepy, especially as you as a viewer, you wouldn't have been expecting this. But now we have to move on to the main part that everyone knows and remembers. For what was seemingly just a one-off, this would prove not to be the case. Later on in the same evening, around 11:15, WTTW was broadcasting an episode of Doctor Who's story Horror of Fang Rock, which was originally broadcast by the BBC some 10 years earlier. So now, I'll just play the clip for you in full. Here is the broadcast interruption.
You should talk often with the old ones of your tribe. That is the only way to learn.
I'll get you a hot drink, miss.
Why, don't some dry clothes, miss.
Because he's a freaking nerd. I think I'm better Chick's worse than freaking buffoon. Oh, Jesus. Yeah. That's the way. Your love is fading. I still see the X. Oh, my files. Oh, I just laid a giant masterpiece for all the greatest world newspaper nerds.
far as I can tell, a massive electric shock. He died instantly.
The generator? Are you always so careful?
Well, that was that. There's so much to take away from this interruption. Now, over the years, the transcript of what this person is exactly saying has changed many times over the years, as the audio you hear is so distorted and it's really tricky to actually understand what he's saying. He mentions Chuck Swirsky, who was a sports pundit for WGN, accusing him of being a... The Coca-Cola sponsorship is touched upon. Even though he's holding a Pepsi can. God, at least do your research. There's one point where we hear the theme to Clutch Cargo, which Max is humming, which was an old American children's show.
Clutch Cargo, with his pals Spinner and Paddlefoot, in another exciting adventure, the Jungle Train.
Not quite sure what relevance, if any, this has to the culprit's message, apart from that reruns of the show did air on WGN, but it's here nonetheless. Later on there's mentions to his piles or files, it could really sound like either.
Oh, my files!
We hear how he's made a masterpiece for the world's greatest newspaper nerds, and then we have some sort of subplot about a gardening glove?
Oh, I just made a giant masterpiece for all the greatest world newspaper nerds. My brother is wearing the other one. But it's dirty. What you gonna put my time?
This honestly does get so much weirder as it goes along. Now, what comes next is probably the most discussed aspect. The picture cuts to the man's lower torso, bum cheeks partially exposed. How lovely. After claiming that we see a figure in some sort of maid's outfit begin to spank him with a fly swatter. Now, not only can I see how this would be really disturbing to anyone who just wanted to watch some classic Doctor Who, but what worries me is this female figure towards the right of the screen. I don't think it's ever been 100% clarified as to who this actually is, but in some frames of the video it almost looks like it's a young child. Whether it's a boy or girl, that's yet to be seen, but if so, that is a bit worrying, because if that's the case, that raises a whole new bunch of questions. Did this child know these people? Were they in on the whole thing? Were they even aware of what they were doing or what this ultimate was going to be used for? And with all these questions potentially running through your head, before you even get a chance to elaborate on it or see where this goes, the picture cuts out and Doctor Who resumes its broadcast.
As far as I can tell, a massive electric shock. He died instantly.
The generator? Are you always so careful?
Now, just because this occurred late at night doesn't mean it didn't make some sort of waves. The interruption made national headlines around the country, as an interruption of this kind had never really happened before.
In Chicago television stations, someone using sophisticated equipment managed to briefly and illegally override broadcast signals on WGN TV and WTTW.
Mission tonight is trying to find out who's responsible for 2 acts of video piracy. Last night, someone broke into regular programming here on Channel 9 and on Chicago's public broadcasting station.
News stations were able to find copies of the interruption due to the fact that many Doctor Who fans were recording the episode. You see, never underestimate the impact of a Whovian. To this day, the people responsible for this interruption have never been identified, which is a bit eerie considering it's been over 30 years since it happened. Nevertheless, whether this was orchestrated to convey some sort of message, or whether it was done as a bit of a joke and just to stick it to the television stations, I guess until the culprits come forward or are discovered, we may never know really why we were treated to the Max Headroom Incident. And with that, that concludes this installment of Video Scaries. I hope you enjoyed basking in the nostalgic clips that once upon a time made us cower or shriek with terror. And what to take away from today? I think it's the following. Thank you for watching. We hope you like, subscribe and share the video around, and we hope to see you next time.